Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we start each Top 10 by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Greetings.
Ruben Bressler.
Cuckoo!
Which we learned was a greeting in France.
Apparently it's a greeting in France.
It has to be musical. It has to be like cuckoo. Like it has to. It can't land with a thud.
I think you must have I think you misheard my greeting. It has to have a certain tenor to it. It has to be melodic in order for it to be a greeting. That's weird. All right. Well,
I got nothing.
In that case, I'm not going to say good. I'm not going to say good evening this week because I didn't say it the correct way. Because I'm not a musical man.
I mean, it's better than Evan. Evan will be like, "Parlez-vous, Francis, y'all."
What?
Yeah.
Trace. See? Wait.
Trace is a word. You're
close. I'm in my Spanish.
It's almost a French word. There you go.
Not quite. Here we go. Right. We also begin with our choice, the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 Dominaria cards. Ruben?
Well, our top comment this week comes from DO770, who writes, "Hard pause. Did none of you pick the Weatherlight? That is literally one of the biggest story cards from the set. It has some really cool interactions with who can and can't crew it on their own. Its effect is literally find the full crew, and it is a big dumb flyer when you have all of the crew assembled. It is flavorful and powerful, and I am absolutely astonished none of you had it on your lists."
Wow.
Well, and it ties in nicely with this week's Legends show as well. So
it's true. And for those who don't know, from Dominaria, it is a mythic for 4 generic mana. Weatherlight is a legendary vehicle. It is a 4/5 with flying, and whenever Weatherlight deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, where artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. And it has crew 3, which means every single member of the Weatherlight can crew it, except old Slimefoot.
Except for Slimefoot and Squee, although I don't think Squee is a full-time Weatherlight flyer anymore. I think he's retired from that pirate life. But yeah, neither of them can crew it on their own. But Squee can make a baby and stand on the baby to reach the steering wheel.
But don't eat the baby.
Crew 3. But don't eat the baby.
Don't eat the baby.
Don't eat the baby. That's the thing.
Hashtag crew with the baby.
So the baby's running the ship. Oh, God. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for your awesome comment. What was the username again?
DO770.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's a Christian name. Get in contact with us on one of our social channels. You get a $50 gift certificate thanks to CoolStuffInc.com. And, of course, at the end of the show, we'll see our final lists and what we didn't include and encourage you guys to participate and see if you can also get your own honorable mention and gift certificate. So, that said, this week we're talking about top 10 legendary creatures. And for literally half of my list, I have nothing.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Before the show started, we were like, oh man, this is a pretty good one. I only have one higher. Aaron only has one higher. We're waiting for Evan to chime in, and he's like, I got 5 hires.
5. Like, I'm in Hireville over here.
Yeah.
Yep. That said, I do get to talk about my number 10. You know what? I'm just going to kick it off with my number 10 because this one goes way, way back. And I like to think that my number 10 and sometimes number 9 are opportunities for me to kind of go in the Wayback Machine and really talk more about nostalgia and feelings rather than sort of a very official list of whatever. Because this was one of the first legendary creatures I ever got to actually play with. And was good and standard and was really cool and flavorful and interesting and impactful. While it has a cool, Masters Edition version or whatever online, back in the day, Autumn Willow said that it was a summon legend, by God. It was 2 green, 4 generic mana for a 4/4 rare from Homelands. Not sure if they had rares in Homelands. Was it rares or uncommons?
Yeah, it might have been that weird. They had different scales of uncommons.
Right, uncommon
or uncommon 1, uncommon 2 with the different arts on them.
Well,
but I don't know how it worked with Autumn Willow specifically.
Either way, Autumn Willow is 2 green, 4 generic mana for a 4/4 rare legend. Cannot be the target of spells or abilities. At the time, spells or effects. This would be known as Shroud. For 1 green : until end of turn, target player I'm sorry, I want to read the Oracle text because it's weird. Until end of turn, Autumn Willow can be the target of spells and abilities controlled by target player as though it didn't have Shroud.
There we go.
Whew. All right. So basically, you can pay in order to target herself with your stuff. You're not, of course, going to let anybody else do it unless you're in a weird, I don't know, EDH game or something. But
right,
the point is,
giant.
this card was actually really cool and powerful back in the day. I know it's like a joke these days. Like literally, all these stats are kind of silly these days. Like
I
6
actually don't
mana,
hate
4/4
that about
Shroud.
her. I actually don't hate that, because there's been a lot of talk about how problematic Shroud and Hexproof are, but I kind of like having the ability because I know I've certainly fallen into that trap when playing EDH of, I'll put the boots on something and it gives Shroud and I'll try to do it again and it's like, oh, I can't do that. And so I think it's kind of cool giving someone the option to like flip that switch.
Yeah, well, you're giving yourself one, or you're, one of the players in the game.
Yeah,
which is kind of neat. I'm not sure it's worth 6 mana and then more mana on top of that. But,
it's in Homelands. It certainly was. This is one of 3 cards in Homelands that saw any tournament play. This one particularly I like a lot because it's referenced on so many other cards. It is, even though it didn't really see a ton of tournament play and hasn't really seen anything competitive in the last 15 or 20 years, people still know Autumn Willow. It's one of those cards that I'm not sure I've ever owned a copy of Autumn Willow. I'm not sure I've ever actually held an Autumn Willow in my hands.
I have.
But it's one of those resonant characters and one of those resonant cards that people are like, oh, I don't know exactly how I know that, or even if you could identify what plane she's from or why she's famous or whatever, but I can certainly recognize who Autumn Willow is.
So here's a fun game. What if this were printed today? My expectation would that it would be 2 green and 2 generic mana. It'd be a 4 mana 4/4 with Shroud, and the activated ability would be 0, like 0:.
Jesus.
I could see that.
Just pick somebody and they can target.
I don't think they do 0:0 that much anymore. I think I'm fine keeping it with a green.
They did it with that red-blue thing.
You're right, with the Wandering
Funeral.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's fun actually to kind of look back and go, wow, this is awful. What would they do to fix it? Just make it cheaper.
Right.
That's how they would fix it. But Autumn Willow, again, has a very special place in my heart in terms of, like, this was one of the first legendary creatures I ever saw, and I was like, whoa, that's what legends do. That's really awesome and powerful, and that was really cool. So, Ruben, what's your number 10?
So in building my list, I wanted to, turn on the spike. I wanted to be, what are the top 10 legends of Magic tournament pedigree and clout and history, and I came across some weird factoids. I wanted to have, cards that had Pro Tour pedigree. This card has a Pro Tour win under its belt. Stuff that's in the cube. This is in the vintage and legacy cubes. And this is also one of the most popular creatures of its day. And yet we have referred to it on this show as a disappointment, as one of the most overhyped cards. I think this was on one of our lists. Ain't nobody respecting the king. Brimaz, King of Ereskos, is my number 10. So Brimaz is a colorless white legendary creature, cat soldier, 3/4 from Born of the Gods, with vigilance. When Brimaz, King of Ereskos attacks, put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield attacking. And whenever Brimaz blocks a creature, put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield, blocking that creature. Those stats are something else. That's quite the stat line. Yeah. And when Born of the Gods came out, this was one of the highlights. Born of the Gods, not exactly a highlight among Magic sets, but even to this day, it's still a $10 card. It won a Pro Tour in the hands of one Mr. Patrick Chapin at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx. 4 of, ladies and gentlemen, in his Abzan control deck that he won that Pro Tour with. So, Brimaz has gotten some guff over the years. Guff, I say.
Guff. Well, this was supposed to be the card that's supposed to save the set, right?
Yeah.
The set was a gigantic disappointment, and it's like, fine, this is your Voice of Resurgence. This is the card that's going to pull your crappy set out of the hole, and it just really didn't do it. Like, yeah, I won a Pro Tour after another set came out, and after that Pro Tour for that set came out, like, eventually it kind of got some play, and even then, you were expecting, when you read a card like that, to be like, oh my god, the value. 4 toughness is making guys coming and going. How can this fail? How can it fail? It still kind of failed.
Well, it was also in the same format as Thoughtseize and Pack Rat, so
Right.
it's cute, fine. You want to spend 3 on a white creature that does nothing when it hits the board, cool. Discard to Pack Rat. I mean, like,
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's good. I mean, and for what it's worth, I think this is another one of those lists that are nice to sort of frame what we're thinking, where Ruben did. And for me, sort of the thing in my head was like, if someone were to come to Magic and say, like, what's the most important legends?
Sure.
What are the ones I need to know about? What if I'm just like coming to the game and I don't know what a Magic is, and like tell me what is a legendary creature to you, and how do they work or whatever. But Aaron, what's your number 10?
So my criteria, since we're bringing up how we formed our list, I kind of went for flavor. I tried really hard not to pick commanders because I feel like a lot of people naturally associate legendary creature with commander, and they're not mutually exclusive. There are some legendary creatures that don't necessarily make good commanders or aren't even necessarily good in a commander deck, and so some of the cards on my list could be described as good, but mostly I chose cards that were very flavorful and that did their characters justice. And it's very fitting. My number 10 is very fitting. Considering that Evan's going to be sitting out most of the show. Fun story, since you're not going to be talking too much, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, hopefully you don't mind. But when I was brought onto the show initially, I was brought in to be the buffer between Evan and Ruben. Evan had predicted that him and Ruben were going to kind of be button heads a lot, and I was going to have to sort of get in the middle and kind of break that up a little bit. And the show, after 3 years we've been doing this, has evolved to the point where Ruben and I kind of had this sibling dynamic, and Evan has sort of turned into the dad, literally being in the middle, because Ruben and I tend to lovingly disagree sometimes, and no card embodies our relationship more than Gisa and Geralf.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at it, come on, like the shaggy hair, the pale face and the veil, it's us, Ruben, it's us.
Excuse me? I'll fight you.
I got my shovel. Right. So Gisa and Geralf is 2, a blue and a black. It's a legendary creature, human wizard, 4/4. When Gisa and Geralf enters battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. During each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature card from your graveyard. We had seen these characters in flavor text. They each got their own individual cards, but they really are a package deal. And so they finally got a card where they were together. They had very important roles in the Shadows over Innistrad storyline, and I was so happy to see this card. It didn't really do anything in Standard, but it has made a bit of a splash in Commander. But I lovingly look at this, and the first thing I see is me and Ruben. So,
yeah, not bad. I also like that represents us, because if you look at the lore of the characters, Geralf is like the acceptable in public spaces, trying to set rules. He came up with the laws of necro warfare, and then Gisa is just like, nah, bro, and just wilding out, going crazy about nothing in particular. So definitely agree with that.
Yeah, as she says, these fiends are slightly less tolerable than you, and then he says, a sentiment that warms my heart, sister. Oh, yes, that is terrific. But we'll move on here to number 9. Guess what?
Oh, no.
Don't have one.
Higher on somebody else's list. All
Sure
right.
is. Aaron, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is a really interesting take on a creature type that we've seen throughout the years. We've certainly seen our share of angels. We've seen like the holy angel. We've seen sort of the dark angel, the fallen angel. We've seen a more of a construct take on angels. We've certainly seen mummified angels like we've seen in Amonkhet. But my number 9 is the first time we've ever seen the unholy union of an Eldrazi angel. This was one of the cards that really highlighted the meld mechanic, which we saw in Shadows over Innistrad block. There weren't many cards with meld, but this was probably the most horrifying and the most memorable of the meld cards that we saw. My number 9 is Bracella, Voice of Nightmares. So Bracella is made up of 2 cards. One is Bruna, the Fading Light, and then the other is Gisela, the Broken Blade. And if you combine them, you get Bracella, Voice of Nightmares, which is legendary creature, Eldrazi Angel, 9/10, 9 power, 10 toughness, flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink. And your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. This card is terrifying. Like, if you look at this, it's just, there's mucus and tissues and tendons and Eldrazi elongated fingers, and this card is horrifying. And you see their 2 like melded, merged, melted heads, and it's just like, this is a terrifying card. And I really think this card, hammered home the horror of Shadows over Innistrad, and we just had never seen anything like this. And so when I think of legendary creature, I think of Bracella.
Yeah, it's awesome. First of all, to have the benefit of Magic cards,
yeah,
which is pretty cool.
I think it's not 2002 anymore. I believe now it's the Kimye.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think is where we go with the couple name.
That's fair, but first of all, I wish they had just done more meld stuff. I think meld was neat, and they did a whopping ultimately three meld cards, 6 non-meld cards or whatever.
6 non-meld cards,
which is cool. I mean, like, this is freaky though. This is about as freaky as they get. They're like, okay, now put the blood in the eyes, and all right, and then the red things, and the fingers are all whatever. It's gross.
I forget what event it was, but I was there. There was coverage of an event. And then the match ended, and they were like, all right, let's go to our backup match. And there was just already a Brucella in the red zone.
Oh, my God.
And it's 2 cards, so it's like twice as big. So we just flash over to that, and I'm just like, whoa, I was not prepared for whatever that is happening. And because it was in the red zone, it was right side up, because you look you look perpendicular to the match. So it was just like right smack dab in the middle, aggressively attacking both the opponent and my face with its many keywords. Yeah, this card's great. I mean, meld would have been on our list of worst keywords with how little it got used if it weren't for how sweet this card is, I think.
Oh, for sure. And I love, like, it is literally just the combined power and toughness. All the keywords are still there. Like, the other ability doesn't really pertain, but, like, it's really cool how everything really did kind of come together.
I think it really kind of showcases the horror of the card, where it's like it's so unnerving that anything 3 or less just can't even look at it. Like, it's that repulsive. I think it certainly makes sense. And you'll notice that Bruna's sort of the fading light. Gisella's the adjectives of, or even the flavor text. They say that Brucella's sort of the visions. She was only Emrakul's visions or something. And Gisella's seen as doing the other thing, and then it's voice. So they're all like different bodily functions or different activities. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in this card, and it's just gorgeous and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, definitely very evocative of the Lovecraftian eldritch elder thing happening. Just a really home run for these 2 cards and for meld on this card in particular.
Yeah, Ruben, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is actually one of only 2 cards in my top 10, and really only 2 cards in all of Magic that have 3 of the 4 things I was looking for. All of my top 10, by the way, is in the cube. Spoiler alert. Just because I think that is a really nice, pretty low bar for how powerful a creature has to be. This creature also has a Pro Tour win, and it also was featured it has an alternate art as part of a dual deck, actually. And so my number 9 is Pelucranos the World Eater.
Yes.
So Pelucranos is a 2 colorless green legendary creature Hydra from Theros originally, but the dual deck I refer to, of course, is Heroes versus Monsters. It's a 5/5, and it has Monstrosity X of X, X, and a green. If this creature isn't monstrous, put X +1/+1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. When Pelucranos World Eater becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Pelucranos. Again, another part of that Patrick Chapin Journey to Nyx's top 8 deck. It's just it became iconic for the Hydra creature type. Green had a long time where they were having a difficult time with what their big, giant, idiot iconic creature type was going to be. The angels in white, sphinxes in blue, the demons in black, the dragons in red. Green didn't really have anything. They had kind of dinosaurs for a little bit, but then eventually the story team decided upon hydras. And Pelucranos is one of the best examples of this. The monstrosity ability in Theros is super flavorful, super interesting, because whenever you're thinking in your head of like the super cinematic final fight with the big monster at the end, it looks like your heroes are going to win, and then, there's some special ability that the monster has that you weren't expecting in the middle of the fight. And Monstrosity really gave you that sort of Hollywood feeling. And Pelucranos was one of the best ones able to pick off opposing elves or whatever small things on the other side of the board your opponent had, let alone if you had a Nykthos and you could start picking off big things.
Oh my God.
So for all those reasons and for many, many more, Pelucranos World Eater, I think, is well-deserving of a spot on the list.
Absolutely.
I appreciate how Monstrosity is like you just had to piss it off, didn't you, mechanic? Like, it's like, well, you just made it angry. Because particularly in this time period right here was that Green just couldn't find a creature that was worth a crap. Like, you couldn't really find a big monster that you wanted to play. And so Wizards was like, all right, here, fine. And they had this gimmick for a while where they would spoil a card from the upcoming set in the dual deck before the set came out. And this was the face card for that monster's deck. And that was really neat and interesting. We're like, maybe it'll work. And then it worked, and it was great to actually have a green monster that was scary, and you didn't want to see anybody draw it, and it was like, wow, then they're going to activate it, and which is really awesome. And so this one really fired on the cylinders, which is cool.
Yeah.
That said, moving on here to number 8, and I get one of these. I get number 8. Yay!
Wow. Proud of you, buddy.
I know, right? And I know there's multiple people who I know personally who would be like, if this is left off your legendary creatures list, you're just out. Just go on. Just get gone. So, when I came back to Magic in the middle of Darksteel, it was a hot mess, like a stanky hot mess. And then Fifth Dawn came out and it got even worse. And it was like, whoo boy, what is happening in Magic? Cranial plating. And eventually we got to the next block, which was really, I was playing Magic and Mirrored, and it's cool, but no, the teeth went in for Champions of Kamigawa, and I loved Champions of Kamigawa. I recognized that it was a lower power level, but the flavor was amazing, the artwork was cool, and it was super exciting, and I loved just the idea of you had this kind of mystical world and stuff, and spirits and whatever. But one of the creatures that showed up, because again, there was a ton of, every rare creature was a legend, and there were even some uncommon legends in there. But one of the ones that showed up just like spoke to me, because I am essentially the white weenie player from back in the day. Small white aggro creature, that's just me. And so essentially I had to make a choice. I originally put a Samaru Hound of Khanda on here, but you got to give it up for 8.5 Tails.
Yeah.
8.5
Tails is my number 8. The card's so freaking sweet. 8.5 Tails is 2 white for...
number 8.
My number 8.5 Tails, if you will.
Well,
Oh, you're gonna feel real dumb when I get to my number 7.
That's why they pay you the medium bucks.
That's correct. Directly in the mead. 2 white for a 2/2 rare legendary Fox Cleric. For a white and a generic mana : target permanent you control gains protection from white until end of turn. And for 1 generic mana : target spell or permanent becomes white until end of turn. So essentially it protected all. And it has the 8.5 tails in the back. And it's really cool. And at one point in time I had the actual statue. They made some statues of the Champions of Kamigawa.
Nice.
Characters, which was really cool. And then I worked with this awesome guy named Daniel, who was super great at graphic design, and he got himself a job at Wizards in R&D doing graphic design. So I gave him the 8.5 Tails statue I had, because he too loved Magic and loved 8.5 Tails, loved Champions of Kamigawa.
There you go.
And I was like, look, I was going to give this to you anyway because it wasn't really doing much for me, but kind of filling up space. But I was like, I know you would love it as much as I love it, so here. And I was like, make sure you put it on your desk.
I know you're moving
Wizards.
from Florida to Seattle, so I thought I'd give you this really fragile, somewhat heavy statue to take with you.
Right. Good
That's
luck.
a really nice gesture.
That's what I do to people. That's what you get for leaving. No, seriously. But 8.5 Tails itself, the card itself was great. Saw some play. I loved it in Limited. I loved playing it in the Cube. It was super awesome. I want to say it stayed in the Cube for an incredibly long time, if not still stayed in it when I got rid of mine. But 8.5 Tails, just is awesome, flavorful, cool, and embodies what I loved about Champions of Kamigawa.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 8.5 Tails is a pretty spectacular card. Just really plays really well. Those white weenie decks that you were referencing from that era of Magic, the Kamigawa era of Magic, were quite powerful. And 8.5 Tails is a huge reason why you were able to, even if you got a little bit flooded, you could protect your 8.5 Tails and finish off the game just sort of by itself. So. Yeah, definitely well worth a spot on the list.
And this was back when you still had protection, and you're able to turn a permanent into white. Okay, that thing is white. I have pro white. Get you. Like it was great to be able to get through no matter what was going on. 8.5 Tails was there for you, which is awesome. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is higher on someone else's list. My only higher.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, I don't know what that feels like. Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 was a crew member of the original Weatherlight, who eventually ended up in the hands of the Phyrexians. They had a card before they either handed themselves over or got caught, and then they had a card afterwards. And I feel like the post-Phyrexian card really did a great job of sort of highlighting how they had warped this character, and ultimately how this character was kind of fine being a little bit warped. My number 8 is Airtie the Corrupted. So Airtie the Corrupted is 2 colorless, a white, a blue, and a black. He is a creature wizard legend, 3 power. power, 4 toughness. You can pay a blue and tap him, sacrifice a creature or an enchantment to counter target spell. If you look back at the original Airtide, you can pay 2 and 2 blue and tap him to counter a spell. But this allows you to do it if you pay a bit of a cost, which Airtide is actually quite happy to be doing. He's happy to be sacrificing a creature. You see him kind of putting a goblin in between his hands and doing something wicked with it. And I really felt like this card did a good job of sort of highlighting what happened here. You had this character who was already kind of cocky to begin with, and you see his original card, and then to see the transition into this card, and you really get to see what the Phyrexians did to him sort of embracing it, and just the twisting from the original version to this. I really appreciated that. And Airtide being one of my favorite characters, I believe he just got dismembered at the end of the storyline, like he got his pieces or something. But I really Phyrexians, man.
So here's what happened. He was responsible. He was partially responsible for Squee being able to be immortal because he enjoyed killing Squee so much that he just kept doing it over and over and over again. Except for one time, he did it, and then Squee overloaded the healing device. And killed exploded. The tie in the explosion.
Yeah, so great story, and I just love the transition from original Airtide to this very corrupted version. I thought it was very well done.
Wow. I mean, like, the whole thing is, the flavor text for his plane shift version here is altered by Phyrexian science, corrupted by black mana, and twisted by rage. Airtide still looked in the mirror and saw only glory. Yeah,
which really embodies the character, and they really did this character justice.
Wow, that's really neat. Cool. So that said, we move on here to number 7. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is, among the criteria. I wanted MTGO Cube. I wanted everybody to be in the Cube. I wanted Pro Tour wins. This card doesn't have a Pro Tour win. I wanted Masters and promotional versions. This card also doesn't have that. But if you're banned in any format, you have my respect. And Raphelos, Llanowar Emissary, is banned as a commander. So for green, you get a 2/1 Elf Druid legendary creature. It has been errata to gate that extra creature type since the Grand Creature Type update. Originally from Urza's Destiny, has the text, tap, add green to your mana pool for each forest you control. Or I guess nowadays the Oracle text would be, add green for each forest you control. Banned in Commander because you just always go turn 2 Raphelos, turn 3 6-drop. Just some ludicrous thing happening. It was too consistent. Just like getting Braids on turn 4 was too consistent. Another general that's banned in the format. Raphelos is one of my favorite creatures to cast. You're allowed to have it in your deck, though. So when I had my Izuri Elf Ball kind of deck and I would just draw my Raphelos, it felt better than drawing the Soul Ring in that deck. It was just so busted in half. And so in addition, being a big player in the Urza's Saga, Destiny, Legacy storyline, just a really cool card, and I think always makes me feel good, brings a smile to my face when I talk about Raphelos.
Yeah, speaking of the Phyrexians, Raphelos' daughter was Belby, and Belby was twisted by, and then Belby's portal, Belby's armor,
And that's the original reason why Airtide became corrupted, was because Belby died in a fight with the folks of the Predator, and then Airtide sort of got left behind, I think, on Wrath, and as a result, he got angry and became what he became.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, he apparently had a romantic relationship with Belby.
Raphelos?
No, this was Airtide. I'm sorry.
Airtide did,
Yeah, which is neat.
Raphelos was their deity.
How in the world, as we record this, remember the stupid MTG Finance stuff, and feel free to look back at this years later because it's ridiculous. Right now, for some reason, revised Savannah lines went up to $8. Was literally bulk last week. $8 right now, which makes no sense. And so I'm right here.
Jumped up like 120% too.
Yeah, it did. And I'm like, Raphelos is on the reserve list, is unbelievably powerful, even if it's still banned in Commander. And it's like $17. How does that don't make any sense to me? This feels like one of those weird, $50 cards because it's just
buy it, kids, buy it.
Buy. I'm telling you, we're going to start entering this really weird phase of MTG Finance, and stuff like that's just going to keep happening, and it's gross. Now that said, I would have a number 7, but it's higher on someone else's list, of course, because why have lists? Aaron, what's your number 7?
Well, speaking of cards that are banned, or that we thought were banned, my number 7 had really, really big shoes to fill. Even though the character doesn't wear shoes, I'm not even sure where they put shoes, but suffice it to say they had very big shoes to fill. And when it was revealed that they were the big bad behind Shadows over Innistrad block, there was a lot of concern that this isn't what we're used to. This isn't any good, until it ended up being dominant enough to be banned in Standard, which is incredibly hard to do. I happen to think this card lives up to its name quite well. Number 7, Lucky 7, Unlucky 7, is Emrakul the Promised End. So Emrakul the Promised End costs 13 colorless mana, so 13 power and toughness Eldrazi. Emrakul the Promised End costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard. When you cast Emrakul, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn. It also has flying, trample, and protection from instants. This card is the epitome of a legendary creature. You know, we had Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. Those are huge shoes to fill, but they really did a great job with this character. You know, they really leaned on sort of the 13, the unlucky 13 with Triskaidekaphobia, the 13 in the mana cost, the 13 power and toughness, the fact that it ties into Delirium and Emrakul sort of subtly causing this delirium that ends up warping the entire plane, you know, turning animals and humans and you know, land into things, and the sort of warping ability of hers. It's just a flavor when on so many levels. The art is beautiful. It looks real. Like, it looks like you could actually touch this creature. It kind of reminds me of the ship from Independence Day a little bit, the top half of it, and sort of that light that's looking at you and that crevice. But this card was just a home run, and I remember it brought up a lot of feelings. People who'd never been mind-slavered before were just like, this doesn't feel very good, and it was just a win on so many levels. And it's funny, because I remember when it first came out, people were like, it's cute, and then cut to like 6 months later and she's banned. But I really like this card. I think it did the Emrakul name very proud, and again, just one of those cards that has a lot of little Easter eggs when you really look kind of closely at it and find little details. I thought it was great.
And no one saw it coming.
No.
Pros did, apparently, because
eventually, I mean, at the Pro Tour, it broke out of the Pro Tour.
Oh yeah.
But the first 2 or 3 weeks, if you recall, of that standard format, it was all Bant Coco all the time.
Yeah.
It was like, people were like, "Oh, is this a broken format?" And then lo and behold, 4 of the top 8 decks of that Pro Tour had at least one copy. I think 4 had at least one copy of Emrakul in it, including Owen Turtenwald's famous run, I believe, to the finals, where he lost to Sam Pardee, who, of course, Emrakul fittingly loses to Liliana the Last Hope in that top 8. But yeah, definitely a super iconic card. Again, banned. If it had won that Pro Tour, it definitely would have made my list. And some of the best art too. I love that piece of art that is on that on the Promised End.
Oh, the art is beautiful. It's just here's where they went wrong. You know, they had this mechanic Delirium. They could have used that mechanic on this card. They could have said, like, hey, you know, Delirium, it costs 3 less or something. But when you could make it like single-digit mana, like in 1 turn worth of whatever, and then get it down to like 6, maybe 7 mana, that's not what you stick on a 13 flying trample pro instant mind slaver your face. Like, what is happening? I get it that they wanted the 13 there, but they should have either pick Delirium and make it a little bit cheaper, or pick a much higher mana cost, because that clever ain't worth it. Let me tell you. It just ain't. Okay. Move on here to number 6. So I have what I would describe as at least an interesting number 6. I feel like I've stretched the rules a little bit on this list, because, you know, I can. It's our show. Who cares? And so this card...
My house, I do what I want.
All right. Troll me. I can make my own rules. So for this one is essentially a half-half. This is half one card, half another card. Well, and it certainly rocked formats. I mean, immediately it took LSV to say, hey, this is like the best card in the set, for people to wake up to go, hey, this is the best card in the set, derp. But when it did, like, it instantly started shooting up like 40, 50, 60, so on dollars, like up to 70, 75, I think, at one point. Jace Vryn's Prodigy just rocked Standard, started rocking older formats. When it showed up, everyone was just like, this is silly. Who's going to play this? And then LSV was like, guys, this is like the best card in the set. And then everyone lost their mind, and everyone bought it and said it was great.
I think it really busted out once the fetch lands came into play. I think the fetch lands are really what pushed it over the top.
I mean, I suppose, but either way. So Jace Vryn's Prodigy is a blue and a generic mana for an 0/2. It is a mythic rare, legendary human wizard from Magic Origins, and it has tap, draw a card, and then discard a card. If there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, exile Jace Vryn's Prodigy, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control, which transforms into Jace Telepath Unbound, which has 5 loyalty. It is a Planeswalker Jace, of course. It has +1 up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 until your next turn. -3, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that card would be put into your graveyard, exiled instead. And -9, you get an emblem with, quote, whenever you cast a spell, target opponent puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard.
I've killed people that way.
Yeah, you have, because this card is ridiculous. It's just like, what do you mean it's +1 gives a -2, very protect? No, it's just a weird little Snapcaster is what it is. And it's the Snapcastering, plus they just kind of nerf one of your creatures just long enough to let me continue to Snapcaster and kill you with it. And you could have both the Telepath Unbound and another Vryn's Prodigy out there, so you could kind of activate it twice, essentially. This card just ran over Standard and was number 1 until it rotated. The card was awesome. It was cool. It was a way to show Jace when he first started. Like, there's so much awesome about this card that I love it.
I ran 4 of them in Esper Dragons when it was standard legal. It was very much the search for Azcanta type card, where it's like if you're dropping it on turn 2, the game goes in a very, very different direction. And you can also do shenanigans with it in Modern with Goryo's Vengeance. You can Goryo's Vengeance Baby Jace, activate it right away, and whoop, it flips into a Planeswalker, and then you don't have to sacrifice it to Goryo's Vengeance. Wow. So there's neat ways to get around that. It's a vintage staple. I just watched, I think, Jarvis Yu playing with it in his vintage deck the other day. I remember it was $60 when I got them a piece, and I was indignant. But yeah, the card is fantastic, and like I said, just the games where you have it just go so differently than the ones where you don't. And then, like you said, the ability to have the actual creature out, and then the Planeswalker is fantastic. And it's just an amazing card. We were even doing this show when that card was revealed, and I remember even you said, like, do they know what they've done?
Yeah.
the hell that they have wrought? What did you do? Oh my God.
If it weren't for Steve Rubin and his green-white tokens deck at Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad, a Jace deck would have won that Pro Tour. And they were 3 different Jace decks. There was an Esper Dragons, there was an Esper Control, and then Andrea Mengucci played Band Company, which, if you recall, played 4 copies. It's the second best Jace. Jace the Mind Sculptor is better than all. Mm-hmm. Then it's Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Card is absurd. It's still $50 to this day. It also tells the origins of Jace, which is the main character of Magic at this point. So just a really good card, fascinating character.
It's about $23, David.
Is it only 23? All right.
That's still pretty good for an Origins Planeswalker. Most of them aren't that expensive.
Oh, you're right. Ruben, what's number 6?
My number 6 has already made an appearance on one of my top 10s, which is my signature spellbook. As a matter of fact. It is a card that I love casting. The look of dread on my opponent's faces whenever I play this, and then immediately get in there for 5 indestructible damage. Boy, they don't like it when I play a Hazoret the Fervent. Nice. I just love me some Hazoret. It's just everything I want to be doing with my life and my choices. So Hazoret the Fervent, otherwise known as Hazoret the Pervert, as first reported on this show with the Invocation version, but we'll let it slide. Hazoret the Fervent is 3 colorless and a red for a legendary creature God. She's a 5/4 with indestructible and haste. Hazoret the Fervent can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. Pay 2 colorless, a red, and discard a card. Hazoret deals 2 damage to each opponent. Just everything, like all those words. That's just like a hug from Jesus, is what that is. It's a quarter of your opponent's life total the turn you play her. She's impossible to deal with, and who needs cards in their hand? Like,
hey, well, and the number 1 thing is don't kink shame. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
She's also the most successful god. Like, no one's really playing Ronus. No one's really playing Banshee. They're certainly not playing Oketra. Like, she sees play in multiple formats. She sees play in Standard. She sees play in Legacy and Vintage. The Dragon Stompy decks love her.
I played her in Modern.
Yeah, because they love to dump out their hand very quickly. I saw Affinity testing her in Modern, because Affinity's just going to sneeze out his hand, so why not strap a cranial plating on her and have a great day? Like, right, your face.
It's very similar to just like, wow, Karn makes a 7/7 now, but just because you played your deck? Like, all right, sure.
Yeah.
Not only is she the most successful one in all of the current and older formats, she's also the most successful one in the storyline, being the only one that survived Nicol Bolas's return with The Last Reckoning, The Last Stand. But Hazaret gets an Undying Fury. And yeah, so I'm a big fan of Hazaret.
She's just really pissed.
She's quite angry.
Quite upset. Aaron, what's your number 6?
So we're going to go all the way back to Fallen Empires. Don't look at me like that. Don't. There's some good stuff there, including this young man. So this character originally debuted in the Fallen Empire storyline. He was responsible for creating thralls, which were sort of these experimented servants that the Order of the Ebon Hand were using. And eventually the Hand suffered their downfall at the hands of one of their creations. A card called Darelor was made. And between the power of the Darelor and the other thralls, a historical event happened called the Thrall Rebellion. And the thralls eventually just overthrew the Ebon Hand, and it was glorious. But the man responsible for the thralls was given new life during Time Spiral, when the rifts in time collapsed or merged or did whatever they were going to do, and this character was given a card for the first time. My number 6 is Endrixar, Master Breeder. So Endrixar is 4 colorless and a black. He's 2/2, a human wizard. Whenever you play a creature spell, put X/1/1 black thrall creature tokens into play, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. When you control 7 or more thralls, sacrifice Endrixar, Master Breeder. I love the flavor here that he's making thralls. This is what he does. This was a very important part of the Thrall Rebellion. But eventually he makes too many, or he makes too many that are good, and they eventually overwhelm him and cause the rebellion. And this card is great in Commander. It fits into so many different decks. I was running it in a Bonsu strategy at one point because you wanted to just feed things to Bonsu to activate her, basically. But I love this card. I love everything it stands for. I love the callback to Fallen Empires. I love the flavor of, doing his thing, but eventually that thing overwhelms you, like the timeline. It was a really neat way to, give a name and a face to an event that not many people knew about, or not many people knew that he was a part of, and I really like this card.
Oh, that's really cool. This is one of those that, while I get it and I understand it, and obviously we get it and we appreciate it and whatnot, this is one of those cards that's hard to kind of justify. If sort of looking at Dominaria and what Dominaria did, I don't think Dominaria would be quite as overt as this is the name of this character and this is the Master Breeder and the Thrall thing. But I love it. First of all, it was ridiculous bomb unlimited. But mainly it was super neat to just be like, well, the Thralls kind of ate him. Sort of.
And having to manage that resource of like you said, so I'm sitting at 4, I can cast this creature and go overboard. Okay, maybe I should cast this 1 drop to get 2 thralls instead. And manipulating those numbers is really fun.
The flavor of the story with the flavor of the card's ability is fascinating because it's like, well, you can't make too many thralls or else they overthrow Endrixar. It's just a really fun card. There's obviously a ton of infinite combos available with Endrixar. I think a buddy of mine had endless cockroaches and Ashnod's altar and some other random garbage like that.
Of course.
There's just so much to like about Endrixar.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So move on here to number 5. I won't have cards for a while. I'll see you at number 3. Ruben,
it's a good thing this isn't a Magic the Gathering show.
That's right. Good thing.
Well, there's only one way for me to talk about my number 5, and it's in this voice.
Oh boy.
My number 5 is in the Magic the Gathering online cube. It is banned in Commander. It is Leovold, Emissary of Trest. On April 24th, 2017, they said that we had hopes for Leovold and gave him every opportunity to prove that he would be strong but safe in the format. He simply wasn't. Leovold violates the tenet of creating undesirable game states by easily locking out other players from the game. We prefer to encourage situations in which everyone gets to play, and it's too easy for Leovold to create the opposite, even unintentionally. Leovold is a black, green, and blue 3/3 legendary creature elf advisor originally from Conspiracy Take the Crown. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, and whenever you or a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. One of the best elf advisors I've ever seen. Still commanding a $40 plus price tag if you want to pick up copies for your legacy or vintage decks, even if it's banned in Commander.
You know how much this thing is in foil?
How much? I'll guess $220.
$250.
Jeez.
And they're out of
Yikes.
stock Oh my god!
Out of stock at 250.
Out of stock
you
at
can tack
250.
on another 10% to that usually if it's out of stock.
There you
Card
go.
is iconic. I mean, in a format where blue decks dominate, you know, this is a really nice, clean answer to it. Not only is it a serviceable 3/3 body, but you know, if you want to be brainstorming, pondering your brains out, good luck. Yep. Especially if you're playing in the outcome decks, are popular in Vintage, where you paradoxical outcome, bounce all your artifacts, and draw a card. Yeah, you're not going to be doing that, and it takes a lot to play a 3-mana card, specifically a 3-mana card where it's 3 different colors. But the Legacy decks will do it, the Vintage decks will do it, and the payoff is immense.
Yeah,
the card is just kind of busted all the way around, and it's one of those that I think ultimately it was the 3 colors that people kind of underestimated it. And
yeah, they were afraid of it. For
they're
sure.
like, well, you know, it dies to bolt. Oh my god, it dies to bolt. Don't
It
die
sure
to
does.
bolt.
You still just get to take a card out of your opponent's hand and then draw a card because they
Right.
targeted your Leovold.
Yeah.
Much less if they target you with Thoughtseize.
I was
Or
watching a
whatever.
game the other day in Vintage where somebody wanted to do the Walking Ballista thing, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I should just shoot down their board." And it's like, not with Leovold, you won't.
Yeah.
And so like, because their plan was to go ping, 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 and it's like,
Right.
well, I'll draw a bunch of cards if you do that. And just watching that stalemate
Yeah.
and that decision process of like, if I don't kill everything, I'm dead, but they're gonna draw a lot of cards.
Yeah. It changes a lot of the combat math
Yes,
and a lot
yeah.
of things. You know, a lot of the things you're like, well, I can lean on Mazavith. Nope, no, you certainly can't. Not with Leovold walking
Targeted, I
around.
dare you.
Yeah.
So targety, so good. Oh man, Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is the only higher on my list this week.
Oh, I don't know how that feels. That's weird.
I was alone at number 5.
Oh yeah. Moving on to number 4. I don't have one of those either. Ruben, what's your number 4, buddy?
I honestly am kind of disappointed that I have this card at my number 4.
You're disappointed by your own choices.
I know, right?
Yes.
Wow,
No,
that's just like my
I'm
life story.
specifically disappointed in you, Aaron Campbell,
Uh-oh.
supposedly of doing broken things and cheating things into Graveyard's fame and reanimating them, because my number 4 is Gristlebrand. Now, how are you gonna act? How are you gonna act like I'm gonna be the guy to talk about Gristlebrand? How is that gonna be a thing to
Daddy
happen?
knows I love him.
No, Daddy knows I love him because I have him. All right.
One of
Gristle
us,
Daddy.
2 of us
is-
have him on our list.
Oh, you have him higher?
He's my number 5.
And Aaron? Not on
Zilcho.
her list. Unbelievable.
Zilch.
Gristlebrand is colorless black, 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 black for a legendary creature demon, originally from Avacyn Restored. He is a 7/7 flying and lifelink creature that has the ability pay 7 life, draw 7 cards. While not banned anywhere, he certainly feels like he could be banned everywhere. Doesn't have a Pro Tour win, but he's got that sweet Grand Prix promo that I really like. A lot of
Band
the
and Commander.
is he banned in Commander? I missed
Banned in
that.
Commander.
All right, so well there you go. Even
you-
more
you-
reason to have him high on
You
the list.
Scryfall guys, come on now. Scryfall's the stuff.
I thought I saw it, but I guess there
you
it
did.
is. There's the red down there. Well, you know.
Weird. Well,
Such
this card is ridiculous, though. This card is just straight nuts.
Sure.
It's just not anywhere close to fair. It fuels
Anytime
itself.
a card says pay some amount of life to draw that many cards, that card has a better than 50% chance of getting banned eventually.
Especially
Cards like
when,
Necropotence, etc. Sorry.
Especially when the cards that you're looking to draw don't cost anything. When you're playing something like Goryo's Vengeance, you're more than happy to, go into a bunch of rituals or go into your Nourishing Shoals and do that sort of thing. When you're playing Legacy and you draw with the Grizzlebrand through your show intel, you can draw some Lotus Petals and find enough mana to possibly get another creature with your sneak attack. Or if you're playing Oath and you Oath of Druids into Grizzlebrand, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to draw into some Moxen, you're going to draw into your Lotus, or draw into some Tormod's Crypts, which you then play against your Dredge player, and then she gets really, really angry and curses your name when she goes to eat SpaghettiOs because she's really upset at what you just did with your broken creature. But yeah, it's fantastic. I've reanimated this card. There's nothing better than playing it on turn 1. It just feels amazing. It's just a fantastic card, and Daddy knows I love him. I don't have to.
Except you don't put him on the list of the greatest legendary
It's not a
creatures.
good time to play Reanimator right now.
Oh,
Legacy. I had to go away for a while. I had to go to college, but I'll be back for Thanksgiving. It's fine.
Wow. Well, Gristlebrand just has put a permanent, awesome sort of, footprint on what Avacyn Restored was. An awesome creature that deserves to be locked in the Hell Vault. Being part of Liliana's contract or whatever. Was super cool. Bells and Locks kind of like the hot newness or whatever, but no, man. Gristle Daddy is always hanging out.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is probably the most heartbreaking legendary creature out there. Just the storyline behind it is freaking tragic. It's a character whose name we'd seen before, but he was given a card in Commander 2014 for the first time. And for those who don't know the story, I will. The card by itself is cute, but when you understand the storyline behind it, it becomes that much more tragic. My number 4 is Felden of the Third Path. So for those playing along at home, Felden is 1 colorless and 2 red. He's a legendary creature, human artificier, 2/3. You can pay 2 and a red and tap him to put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except it's an artifact. In addition to its other types, it gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next step. It's his wife! It's his dead wife! So for those who don't know, Felden had a wife named Loran, and they got together, and she had suffered some injuries thanks to some torture by Ashnod, and then she died. And then, mad with grief, Felden decided he was going to replace her with an automaton. But then once he realized that the creature wasn't really her, he took out its power stone and placed it by his wife's grave as a statue. So he's essentially trying to remake his wife with these artifact creatures, and then realizing that it'll never be her, he deactivates them. Like, come on! Like, I don't care who you are. That's depressing as hell. And so that's the flavor behind why he does what he does. And so he's also known from Felden's Cane. That's another popular card that we've all used at various points. But yeah, you just read this card and man, just right. It's his wife. Like, he builds her and then takes her apart. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's his only other card is Felden's Cane. And so, like, growing up, in Magic, with Magic, playing Magic, all I knew was the guy's cane. I had no idea about his wife and his bringing him back and whatever. I was like, well, it's that thing that removes graveyards from the game, so that's pretty neat. And now it's just like, damn, really?
But he did get a happy ending, though. Once he finally made peace with his grief, he lived out his days in happiness. He let other people learn from his library and borrow his books, and he taught them things, and he ended up having a very fulfilling life. But this card just happens to be a bit of a snapshot into a darker period in his life.
It's
but man,
heartbreaking. As soon as you said this is probably the most tragic character that is on a legendary creature, I knew exactly what you're talking about. I immediately searched it up and was like, yeah, that's awful.
I mean, holding the face and the hand, I mean, just, oh.
And the flavor text of "She Will Come Back to Me," it's like, oh my god. Like,
the Third Path, of course, referencing the Brothers' War, where there were the two sides, and those who didn't choose to pick a side opted to follow the Third Path, and he couldn't stay out of the war forever.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just a really, really sad story. Really cool card though, and a great story, but really, really just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Wow. So, man, a lot of my hires are about to show up as we're going here to number 3, of which I have one. It's amazing. Wizards likes cycles, and players like cycles. I love cycles. Cycles are cool. They're a way to show you.
I'm going through one right now.
I know, right? Now, if there's anything wrong with that, I guess, or whatever. It's emotions, y'all. And so the
I had
idea,
a joke too, but Aaron's was way funnier than anything I could have added to that.
It's true. But some of the cycles are really powerful, and some of them are just kind of cute and clever and whatever. Sometimes they're common cycles, uncommon, rare, so on and so forth. But sometimes they want to do cycles and they want to really play it up. They want to make these characters big and impactful and powerful and interesting and exciting. And I think they certainly did that. And they've done that with other sets in the past. For example, Kamigawa had their dragons. They were very close to making my list, but I had to cut it. That makes me sad. However, in New Phyrexia, they had the Praetors. And none was greater than Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite. She ruled all for 2 white and 5 generic mana. She is a 4/7 mythic legendary creature Praetor. She has vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2. And creatures your opponents control, they get -2/-2. So, Wrath, you're aboard. Make my board nuts. Sounds good. That's a winning card right there.
My number 5. My first exposure to this card was in the French Rights deck in Standard, which was red, white, and blue, and cheating her into play. I certainly reanimated this card a time or two. It's basically game over for any deck with little creatures. If you're in the Dredge Mirror, you basically are just racing to Elish Norn, because once it sticks, you're not going to do anything. I love sort of the flavor of this card, of the majesty behind her, that not only is she so awe-inspiring that she makes everybody around her better, but she weakens everybody, by being so majestic and so terrifying. And we've never seen anything like this before. We've certainly seen Crusade effects and even Ascendant Evinkar effects that are like -1/-1, or they're bound by like a color. No, this is all. This is all my things, no condition, with the exception of her, and then all your things. It doesn't discriminate, and this is massive. And the art is just mind-blowing.
I mean, the art is incredible. I mean, ultimately, I like the ideas that in the flavor text it says, the Gitaxians whisper among themselves of other worlds. If they exist, we must bring Phyrexia's magnificence to them. If you were to say, what's Phyrexian's magnificence? I'd be like, it's Elishnorn.
Yeah.
She's great.
Shout out to Igor Kirillsuk, who also did the Gristlebrand art. Also did Elishnorn here. Also, I think that there was one of the best cosplays I've ever seen in Magic was a Masha. I think her name was Masha.
Yeah.
Masha cosplay. Masha cosplays did an Elishnorn with that absurd wind vane headpiece that makes it difficult to go through revolving doors.
Yeah, even her shoes had like the tendon or the meat looking effect. Yeah, she went in.
And of course, when you're talking about Elishnorn cosplay, you can't forget about the LSV tokens that came out of Can of Fireball as well. This was the top end of a lot of the pod decks back in Standard. When you wanted to get rid of your 6-drop for whatever reason, you could win the pod mirror by going and getting an Elishnorn. This is a popular reanimation target. It's just been played in everything that can possibly have a reasonable expectation of playing it. Just a super powerful card and a well-deserving of a top 3 slot.
Oh man, that whole sort of front piece of the head, like it's so cool. It's so awesome. But how does she go through doors? I don't.
It reminds me of the
distance.
Yeah, sorry.
Look in the distance, you can even see some of they're on a card. I don't remember what card it is, but you can see them like holding her dress. Like that thing has span. Like it's insane.
Wow.
That headpiece reminds me of those Bajoran light ships, you know what I'm talking about, from Star Trek, that they use the power of the sun to sail the skies in space.
Come on, DS9.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she uses the power of the sun to travel across space and time.
Oh man,
Sure
some Silent Hill stuff right there.
I don't think that's canon, but that's my.
Don't think so.
It's head canon.
Wow.
Okay. No, you didn't.
Wow. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is a super iconic character who's been around for forever. He also made an appearance in, I believe, From the Vault Legends. I believe he is one of the, or maybe it's From the Vault 20. He's a character that has been around forever, was a major part of the Time Spiral storyline, I believe sacrificing his life to be able to save the plane of Dominaria. Has a Pro Tour appearance, a Pro Tour win in the hands of Remy Fortier in the famous countertop Tarmogoyf Chase Rare control that was kind of the progenitor of Legacy Check Pile. You know, just shove a bunch of good cards into a deck together. Very similar to Next Level Blue in the old extended format as well. Lots of cool combos going along with him, including cards like Caracas and Riptide Laboratory to be able to reuse Venser Shaper Savant. Venser Shaper Savant is a 2-colorless blue-blue legendary creature human wizard, originally from Future Sight. He has Flash. And when Venser Shaper Savant comes into play, or enters the battlefield now, return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. That is a heck of a ability. It doesn't say counterspell on it, so you can return uncounterable spells to their owner's hands, as Remy did in the finals of the Pro Tour in Valencia. In the finals, he was playing against a Enduring Ideal deck. And in the final game, Enduring Ideal, with the help of Beseju, who shelters all, was on the stack and uncounterable. And Venser made an appearance and returned it to its owner's hand. Also appeared in the top 8 of Pro Tour Berlin in Kenny Oberg's Tesserator deck. Has been in standard blue-white Revelark control and combo variants. Has been a big piece of lots of standard and even some modern and legacy decks of recent memory. Just a very powerful card and one of my favorites too. Back in the day when I had my Rasputin Dreamweaver EDH deck, Rasputin not making an appearance here in the top 8. Spoiler alert. But yeah, exactly. But just a great card. Lots of tricks, gives you lots of options, and just an excellent character and card.
I mean, you know, gave his life to save Karn, essentially. Is that right?
Yeah.
You
I think so.
I think he gave his spark back or something to Karn or something. But the point is, certainly from Valencia, because that's like the first Pro Tour Magic show. Go look up Magic Show, Pro Tour Valencia. It was sweet. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was super fun, and I loved it, and I love this card, and a whole lot of memories just wrapped up into that experience. Not only seeing this card be awesome, but also sort of that the Pro Tour experience on top of it, which was great. And this card was super close to making my list a whole bunch of times. I was looking at it, I was like, oh, there's so much good stuff, and it's weird, because based on my hires, I know all of your last picks. This is really strange.
He's really also weird. Featured in Dual Decks Venser versus Koth, which, I mean, the character, not the card, but
sure.
But yeah.
Well, because he's in his Planeswalker version, correct?
Right. He's in his final form, yeah.
There you go. Aaron, what's your number 3?
Evan, you mentioned, Valencia being a very, important moment for you that you will always remember. And one of my favorite moments happened at GP Detroit. You wouldn't think memorable things at Detroit, but here we are. We were in the middle of Eldrazi winter. I was playing Modern Ad Nauseam. I made day 2 at my first ever GP that weekend. But something else really impressive happened that weekend. Wizards was about to start previewing cards from Shadows over Innistrad. They had built this giant cathedral in the middle of the event hall, and they hired a beloved cosplayer, Christine Sprinkle, to come and portray a character from the storyline. And while she was there, she got to preview several of the cards, and one of the cards being her namesake card, the card of the character she was cosplaying. And I will never forget everybody stopping what they were doing and running over to the chapel, seeing her walk out of the chapel dressed as this card, flipping the card over. I've never seen awe and just numbers like that before. The aerial shots, like you can see just this empty hall and then everybody in this corner of the venue. And the cosplay was worth doing that, and the card was certainly worth doing that. My number 3 is Archangel Avacyn. So Avacyn is 3 colorless and 2 white. She's a legendary creature angel, 4/4 flash, flying, and vigilance. When Archangel Avacyn enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. When a non-angel creature you control dies, transform Avacyn at the beginning of your next upkeep. And then she flips into Avacyn the Purifier. 6/5 angel. When this creature transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. This card defines standard. There was certainly the Avacyn tests where it's like, can you deal with this? Do you have a plan to deal with an Avacyn just swooping in and protecting things? And if you don't, you might as well stay home. She saw play in a lot of decks. She was strangely enough, she actually saw play in the Coco decks as a way to protect everything they were doing. But the card was amazing. The reveal was amazing. Go Google, Sprinkle and Avacyn, because that Purifier costume was nuts. I was there for it all. I will never forget it. And this card was just amazing. It defined standard. It defined Shadows over Innistrad. They needed this card to be good, and it delivered in spades. And it's probably, I think it's probably the best Avacyn. I'll go on the record and say that. Yeah. And rightfully so.
I mean, this was my number 4, so I was a whopping 1 off. It was that incredible sort of marketing push they did with Christine, which was nuts. It was great. In standard, this is one of those, they wanted it to be good. It was good. It wasn't overpowered good, but it was damn good. You did not want to attack into 5 open mana. Unless you had a removal spell at the ready, because otherwise you're going to get,
and even if you had a removal spell at the ready, if your opponent had a board presence of any size, the Avacyn indestructible trigger would still make the other things indestructible for the turn. So even if you had a removal spell for the Sarah Angel that has only upside, I mean, we're talking about one of probably the 3 best uncommons in Dominaria. With flash, with a trigger, with a flip side, with
rare.
The wrath. She's absurd. Yeah, she's just an absolutely crazy card. Obviously also has a Pro Tour win in the hands of Steve Rubin. Dominated those Bant Coco mirrors because everyone would put these dinky little Duskwatch recruiters and bounding Crasises onto the board, and then Archangel Avacyn would show up, and party'd be over at that point. Just an amazingly good card.
Yeah, this one was a sweet one that, they wanted it to be one of the best. It was one of the best. It was awesome, and here we are. So definitely a top 4, top 3 choice that I think we can all get behind. And we go to number 2. I don't have one.
Wow.
Because somebody has this as their number 1. So let's see here. We got 1. All right, we got 2 left for me. I don't know who's they're going to be on, but Ruben, go ahead with your number 2.
My number 2, again, I'm big attachment to cards that have Pro Tour wins. and this one has 2 Pro Tour wins. Both of them in the same deck. Both of them about the same ability, really. It's just an absurd thing that this little guy can do. It's from Evan's favorite block for whatever reason. He still is just a Kamigawa apologist.
I love Kamigawa. Kamigawa did nothing wrong.
Nothing is strong.
Evan's gonna make that Chris Crocker video of leave
Kamigawa alone. You know what? It doesn't matter, because from every cloud a little rain must fall, and there's everything's got a silver lining, and one of the silver linings out of Kamigawa was Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker.
Yeah.
So Kiki-Jiki is 2 colorless, red, legendary creature, Goblin Shaman, originally from Champions of Kamigawa. Shaman, Nevada, Colorado. Which one you prefer? All right. It's a 2/2 with haste. We're not really paying for those 2/2 stats. Tap, put a creature token into play that is a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That creature token has haste, sacrifice it at end of turn. This was basically the extra Splinter Twins in all of the Splinter Twin Pro Tour decks that have done very, very well, including winning 2 of those modern Pro Tours. Being able to copy things like Deceiver Exarch and Pestermite, and also Zealous Conscripts. And in the fact that Kiki-Jiki is itself a creature, can also go infinite with blink effects. So it can also make an infinite number of Restoration Angels, for example. Kiki-Jiki, just a fabulous creature. Been in the first Modern Masters, and then again in Modern Masters 2015. It was in From the Vault Legends. It's just a iconic character and just a super cool card. And I think that it came very close to being my number 1 just based on pedigree alone.
Well, this was my number 7, all the way down there, I guess. But for me, it's interesting to look back, because a lot of cards are just really terrible until the thing shows up that makes them not terrible.
Yep.
Like, until Pestermite showed up, this card was crap. It was a bulk rare at best, and then later they put Deceiver Exarch, and it's like, oh god, we actually made another one. Then the whole Splinter Twin bit. For me, I have that classic memory of walking outside. I think it was the Champions pre-release, but it might have been the Betrayers pre-release, where somebody was like, I'm never going to play with this stupid thing, and they gave me a foil Kiki-Jiki because reasons. They didn't want to throw it away or something. I don't know. And I was telling them how much I like the stupid set because, yay, Kamigawa. But Kiki-Jiki itself is a super cool little goblin monster dude, and he looks really weird. He's got that weird, like, the art, this artwork with the hands and the fists is not.
The crunched together fists. You don't like that one?
I don't like it. I like the original. He's pointing. You go. He's making a dragon, even though he can't copy the legendary dragons from Kamigawa. Still, he was cool and he was awesome, and I loved him.
I will say that Kiki-Jiki did have a standard deck. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't.
He was
great.
in the red-green thing, wasn't he?
He was in that the red-green like weird land destruction deck that you would try to copy. I think it was like Root Devil, or I forget what the card was
Root
called.
Something, yeah. Root Green or something.
And you would play Plowlanders and Stone Rains and stuff.
Yeah, he sometimes sees play in Legacy Goblins. In Modern, certainly the Kiki Cord decks. Now you pair it with Restoration Angel, and that's sort of your win condition and being able to cord into the other half. But even the Cord decks, even just doing it with like a wall of roots, like there's just so many innocuous things you can pair with it for value. If your plan A isn't anywhere in sight, and it's just it's surprisingly, it looks harmless, and then you really start to think of all of the cards it goes with, and you're just like, damn.
So look at this garbage. Root Runner is 2 green, 2 generic mana.
Runner, that's the one.
It is an uncommon from Champions of Kamigawa. It's a 3/3 spirit. For 2 green, you can sacrifice it, to put target land on top of its owner's library. You remember how you make people draw lands, and that's like super fun? That's like super fun magic. And it also has Soul Shift 3 because reasons.
Just why not?
So you're going to copy this thing, put lands on top, and say, go. Let's just...
Soul Shift is so stupid.
It's so...
But yeah, that was... that's a hell of a card.
That is a hell of a card. Aaron, what's number 2?
So we've talked about some things throughout this show. We talked about gods. We talked about Hazaret. We've talked about creatures having protection from things, protection from light, protection from instants. How about a real god? How about a legitimate god, a Hydra god specifically? And how about protection from everything? Whatever you got. Nothing is more legendary than protection from everything. Mm-hmm. Instants, enchantments, lands, creatures, whatever you have, it doesn't care. My number 2 is Progenitus.
Yeah, it is.
So Progenitus is 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, and 2 green for a legendary creature, Hydra Avatar 1010. Protection from everything. I never thought I would
That sentence
see the
is
day
great.
where that's on a card. Like it sounds like a parody almost. And then if Progenitus would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal Progenitus and shuffle into its owner's library instead. This card is amazing. This card is a very important part of the sort of Conflux Alara storyline. It's the namesake of Relic of Progenitus, which is certainly the bane of my existence. But yeah, it was essentially a god, a being of immense power that was forced into an avatar body, a Hydra avatar. Fun fact, because of the shortage of blue and black mana, the blue and black mana has sort of withered and died. I know, poor Progenitus. But yeah, so this card is just a wealth of story knowledge, and there's just nothing more legendary than a god with protection from everything. And I love that this is a sideboard card in the elf decks.
Yeah. Go get that with natural order.
Absolutely. And so I love it. And just because if you're gonna have a legendary card, you got to have this card, because everything we've talked about, it just does it better and bigger.
Well, this was my number 9 because
My number 8.
Nice, because this is one of those cards that I want to say when somebody's like, what's cool about legendary creatures? And I'm like, look at this. You see how sweet this Hydra is? This Hydra is amazing. This Hydra's been cool from day one. Like, you just can't ever reanimate it because you got to do some way to sneak it into play if that's the way you want it. You're going to have to pay full price for it otherwise. Like, the soul of the world has returned. And then it's Progenitus, and the phrase protection from everything is great.
Yeah, the 3-word phrase protection from everything is amazing. And that it's there are some cards that you remember the first time you see them because they've just got that impact. For me, it's always been 100-handed one. I will always remember the first time I saw 100-handed one and just like got to the end of the sentence and was like, wow, that's a magic card. Progenitus, I had that same effect. Protection from everything. Wow, what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
And they made it into a GP promo as well. It's popular as a commander because it's just a 5-color commander that has a cool thing that you can do and just throw it down on the board.
I have a friend that plays a Progenitus deck and doesn't even cast the Progenitus. Like,
sure, it's just there for status.
It's like a plan D, but like, yeah, it's
Right.
used to use all the colors.
It's a status thing. It's like having, it's having rims on your car. You don't necessarily.
Wow.
They're not,
Progenitus is
I want
rims. Got
Progenitus
it.
rims. Wizards, get on that. Progenitus rims. Yes.
Wow.
all
All right.
colors of the rainbow.
Well, we can move on here to number 1. Aaron, what's your number 1?
I mean, what could really be better than a god? I mean, we all know that I love black cards, I love dark things, I love broken things, and when I think about cards that are black, that are from the black color pie, and not inherently broken, like there's something, it's actually quite fair when you think about it. You can't really cheat it into play because there are very deadly consequences if you do. Specifically, if you play the Flottery, for those of you who enjoy Momir Basic, you could very well just lose the game if you happen to find this creature. And there's just nothing really like it. We've certainly seen cards that, Master of Cruelties, you target a player and like, oh, they have to discard a card, or Quietus, they might lose like half their life. This card just kills people. That's just what it does, or kills you if you're not careful. My number 1's Phage the Untouchable. So Phage is 3 colorless and 4 black. She's a 4/4 avatar minion. When Phage the Untouchable comes into play, if you didn't play her from your hand, you lose the game. No show and tell, no reanimating. No, you need to pay that mana, girl. That's what you need to do. Whenever Phage deals combat damage to a creature, destroy it. And then it can't be regenerated. And then whenever Phage deals combat damage to a player, they lose the game. Phage sort of being this toxic, contagious character from the storyline, this really embodies that. And it also embodies sort of the unholy way that she was made. Sort of this unholy convergence of like a spark uniting and an attack happening. And that really is emphasized in the way that you have to play her. You can't just play her. You have to play her only one way. And that's really reflected in this card. Sort of the poisonous nature of her, that when she touches a player, you lose the game. There's nothing cute. It's not like that player takes damage. No, they're out of the game. My friend Autumn likes to play this as her commander and with Torpor Orb. And then she had a card, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Whispering. Whenever a creature dies, it comes into play on someone else's control.
Oh my god.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember, like Whispering Echoes, I think it is, or something. But I remember she had played this card. Somebody board wiped, and she was like, who do I want to die?
Right.
And then just being like, whoop.
It's
if you're playing Momir Basic, obviously you're not paying the mana cost for it, so God help you if you get it and you lose the lottery. But there's just nothing more legendary about this creature, and really everything it embodies, how unholy it is, and just sort of just the casting clause, the things that it does when it hits. It's just perfect, and there's just nothing more legendary to me than Phage.
Well, it's a version of Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica, the Otarian barbarian whose brother is Kamal, and the patriarch, apparently, the Cabal
it's her
patriarch.
baby daddy.
Yeah, and she was captured by Braids and brought to the Cabal patriarch, and he attempted to destroy her. Instead, gave birth to Phage the Untouchable through the unique combination of Jessica's Planeswalker Spark, the patriarch's Killing Touch, and the intervention of Numina Kabur, whoever that is.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, I thought this was cool. She was cursed so that anything she touched would rot, and because of this, the only fabric she could touch was silk, and the only inorganic items were stone and steel.
And the patriarch was the only one who could touch her, so they made a babby.
They did
Like you do.
make the babies.
Yeah. And then she turned into Corona afterwards. So Jessica's seen some
The
things.
false god, yes.
Yeah, but this card is just, and then the visual of it is just,
Yeah, it's crazy, but ultimately, like, it is one of the blackiest black cards to ever black a black card. Because you're like, oops, it killed you.
The best use of Phage I've ever seen was I was at a PTQ, and a player was playing Storm, and the Storm at the time didn't have any creatures in it yet. They hadn't printed Electromancer yet. There was no Baral. And so his opponent had sideboarded into a card called Telemann Performance.
Oh my god.
And the Storm player, and the way Telemann Performance works is 3 colors, blue, blue, mill an opponent's card until they reveal a creature card, and then you put a creature, the creature, whatever creature is revealed, into play under your control. And so the Storm player put a Phage into his deck, anticipating his opponent's Telemann Performance. And when his opponent cast it, the guy's friend behind him, I think it was Christian Valenti, was behind him.
Oh my god, I know Christian.
And Christian, like, took his shirt off and circled the room. He was just so excited that it finally happened. He was like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened ever in my life.
Because the performance hit Phage, he would get control of Phage, but he didn't pay for Phage, so Phage kills him.
Wow.
Oh.
Hoisted by your own petard, indeed. It is the level above, which you could also be called the next level.
Yeah.
Because
You can't even be mad at that if you lose that.
oh man, that's just incredible. But Ruben, what's your number one?
So that's a great number one. That's like a legend that feels like a legend, and so does Progenitus, honestly, and that's also a great one. But nothing feels more legendary to me. It begins and ends for me with Emrakul the Eon's Torn. Is a 15 mana,
Bow down.
15/15 legendary creature Eldrazi, mythic originally from Rise of the Eldrazi. Get out your checkbooks. All right. Emrakul the Eon's Torn can't be countered. When you cast Emrakul, take an extra turn after this one. Flying. Protection from colored spells. Annihilator 6. When Emrakul is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. It's banned in Commander.
Mm-hmm.
It's banned in one-on-one Commander.
Jeez.
It also has a couple of promos. It has a Grand Prix promo, and it also has the Rise of the Eldrazi pre-release promo. So if you went to the Rise of the Eldrazi pre-release and got yourself a promo Emrakul, you got a cool $40 bill sitting in your deck box
The
nowadays.
RPTQ one is pretty too.
Yeah, the RPTQ one is
yeah.
also, that one's up to 70s or somewhere along those lines. It's an iconic baddie. It's an iconic character in the history of Magic. Giving birth to the entire Shadows over Innistrad storyline and the Battle for Zendikar storyline. It's the creature that you want to cheat into play. It's the most that has ever been put on a card that you can put into play once at a time with something like Show and Tell or Sneak Attack or Shallow Grave or something along those lines. Emrakul, the Eon's Torn, might be the most powerful pound for pound creature printed.
Yeah, and there's so many ways to cheat at Oath of Druids. You can do Show and Tell, you can do Sneak Attack, you can do Through the Breach, you can do Goryo's Vengeance in response to the trigger. Enchantress, you can just bide your time and make a bunch of mana and hard cast an Emrakul. There are just so many ways to cheat this card into play, and it's just such a terrifying card where it's pretty much just game over. Like you might be at 20, just pack it out. Just pack it out, girl.
Well, this was my number 2. So we were very, very close in that because it's hard. Like, if this is one of those cards that, like, they knew they were setting a bar, and they knew that this bar better be freaking high if it's 15 freaking mana. I mean, this was Rise of Eldrazi was battle cruiser magic. It was putting all of it into just one thing, and that one thing's going to, you're going to ride to victory. Well, by God, Emrakul, you ride to victory.
This is the biggest, baddest battle cruiser, that's for sure.
Ever. Emrakul is obviously a huge story moment. It has incredible artwork from Mark Tadine. It has some awesome promos, and they're all worth a whole bunch of money. Like, there's no version of Emrakul, even the other one, even the Promised End, that isn't worth something. But Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, like 4 versions, 5 versions, they don't care. Still worth money. Still worth $40 plus.
Yeah, I'm proud to say I survived an Emrakul swing once and actually killed somebody. I remember we were playing Modern, and I had him pretty low, and then he threw the breach to me. I took the 15, sacrificed all my blood gas, but I had a land in my hand, and so the next turn he sacrificed Emrakul, and I played a land on my blood gas at haste, and I killed him, and that felt really, really good. But yeah, typically you see that, and you just know to pack it out.
I've sacrificed 6 to the Annihilator trigger and blocked with a Baleful Strix before.
Yes!
That's always a good one. There was, when the Omniscience decks were popular, one of the sideboard cards that they would put in their sideboard to Burning Wish for was Army of the Damned, so that you could have an army that could then kill your opponent, but also let you sacrifice 6 permanents to your opponent's Emrakul if they happen to have one in play.
You can also pair this with Release the Ants, and so even if you're not able to, or even if you can either, even if you don't want to do it or whatever, you just Release the Ants, and because Emrakul is the top card, your opponent will in theory have nothing that costs more than that. So it's take one, which feels awful.
Well, that's the old Petals of Insight Omniscience combo where you just find the Emrakul and then bite your opponent with a million ants. Legacy's weird. You're going to have to take a minute to go read some Legacy articles on old school Omniscience because they used some strange ones.
Yeah, but, well, for my number 1, I don't know if this is cheating. This is one of those, like, before I had a creature that was also a Planeswalker. And for my number 1, I was just like, man, if you're going to, like, all right, here's the 10 legends that you should know about because it's Magic, right? You should know some old school with Autumn Willow, and you should know some new school with Archangel Avacyn, and you should have all these really cool, interesting cards like Progenitus and stuff. And I'm like, man, but what's number 1? What's the number 1 card that has a legendary creature on it? And I'm like, wow, could there be anything more legendary than the guy who made the game? Richard Garfield, PhD from Unhinged. Yes.
Not bad. I like it.
Wow.
2 blue, 3 generic mana for a 2/2 legendary human designer. You may play cards as though they were other cards of your choice with the same mana cost. You can't choose the same card twice.
That is good.
And the flavor text speed.
That's a great choice.
Thank you. And yeah, he doth spake. Let there be magic. Oh, I mean, look, and not only that, he's came back around to give us Dominaria. Oh my God, Dominaria is so sweet. I was just like, man, I want to put Richard Garfield at the top. I mean, it's an unhinged card, but like, who cares? It's still a legendary creature.
I still have an email that he sent me. So back when I was doing the deck tease, I wanted him on for my 100th episode. And he's very hard to get a hold of. He's not on social media. He doesn't make his contact information known. He's a very private person. I had to call in a string of favors. I had to call like Chapin's wife at the time, who like asked Chapin, who asked somebody else, who then sent me like a nondescript email and was like, here's the email address and burn it afterwards. And I still have the email. It never happened, unfortunately, because he's a very busy man. But somewhere in my email box, I still have it saved and starred and highlighted him saying, "Hi Aaron, I'd love to be on your show." And I'm like, oh my God, I love that.
Oh man,
that's amazing.
So I'm pretty happy with how this top 10 got. Even if I had half the selection, I don't think my number 1 was pretty sweet.
That's a good one. I was not expecting that at all, and that's a great number 1.
But it makes sense because without him, none of ours would exist, quite frankly.
Sure.
I mean,
it's true.
And if you want your own foil copy of Richard Garfield, PhD, that'll cost you about $200.
Are there non-foils?
There are non-foils, about
thankfully.
7.
Okay.
Yeah, non-foils are easy, but the foils, not from Unhinged.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was our top 10 legendary creatures. You'll see them on screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, and Ruben's top 10. And we want to hear from you.
We had a good list this week. Sometimes I'm disappointed in us. I'm sad at
Wow.
myself. Usually myself. I'm usually disappointed in myself. Sometimes I'm disappointed that Aaron doesn't have Gristlebrand on her list. But I thought that all of our lists were great this week.
It was pretty spectacular.
Well, when they ban Deathrite Shaman and Legacy, I will take Daddy out for a spin again. So.
Fair.
Wow. Well, we want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Cuckoo, Evan.
Cuckoo. Cuckoo.
I am wearing my French national team jersey, by the way, in case you weren't paying attention to that. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so that
I think that I would know how to say cuckoo, Aaron.
you'd think.
Oh, man.
We're going to move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmikespodcast.com, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, and do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, on our Magic Mikes subreddit, and the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmikespodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmikespodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.